Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the Life Recreated channel. My name is Nick, and on this channel, we are all about learning how to heal and grow after spiritual abuse. And so each week we tackle some difficult conversations, so where we can learn how to grow and learn how to move on and kind of press forward from that. So if you're here for the first time, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Definitely want to get notified of what we got going on. So on today's show, listen, when I'm recording this show, if you're watching the replay of this, we are the Thursday right before Father's Day. And it made me start thinking about, just being a father. Obviously, probably if you clicked on this thumbnail, you saw that picture. The left-hand side was like my your picture, and the person on the right, that's actually my son. So it was just amazing how much we look alike. And so Father's Day is approaching, and I thought it would be a good idea, as I've been thinking about this, to talk about what I've been learning, or what I've been learning, or what I've learned from my experience of spiritual abuse, and how I've taken some of those lessons and kind of translated them over into just being a father. So really kind of just being in a mode, or being in a space where, obviously, some of the things that we've talked about on the show, some of my other videos talks about some of the detrimental and damaging effects that spiritual abuse can have on people, or folks that get hurt. Church, some of that stuff, it's very hard to get over, and it takes a long time to heal from it and grow from it. But I felt like coming from a different angle and a different position of talking about some of the good that can actually come out of it, right? So some of the benefits that can kind of come out of it. And I know that sounds kind of like an oxymoron, but at the end of the day, when we start healing, we start allowing, those experiences and those situations to really kind of run their course, as far as their journey through helping us to heal. When we get on the other side, we can see that there's a lot of beauty in a lot of those experiences. So today I'm going to talk about the that kind of helped me, or the things that I learned through my experience with spiritual abuse, and how I took some of those lessons and I applied them to being a father, and how I father my kids. One of the reasons that I think that this is so extremely important, and this is something that I'm a huge advocate for, is I feel like a lot of times when we look around in a generation, where the family system doesn't get supported the way that it needs to. And especially in that role with fathers and their children. I try and be very active in my kids' life, and what they're involved in, what are the things that they like, doing activities, spending that time with them. I feel like that's so important. Just even in my own experience growing up, there were some things that I maybe wish I had, or some things that I kind of wish that I experienced growing up as a child, that I didn't get to experience. And so I said, you know what, this time around, it's an opportunity for me as a father to take those experiences and really try and do something different, so that we can help just build a legacy for our generation moving forward, right? And so, all that being said, let me just jump in. These are three things that I learned from my spiritual abuse experience, and I kind of translated them into being a father. So number one, I learned about having patience over performance. Patience over performance. So my kids right now, 8 years old, 6 years old, and one of the things that I had to wrap my mind around a lot of times, and I think I've caught myself on this many times as a parent, is getting into this mindset, where I want my kids to behave a certain way, I want them to act a certain way, but then kind of forgetting the fact that they're only 8 and 6 years old sometimes. My 39-year-old, 40-year-old brain thinks you should understand this, you should get this, and there should be no problems here. But what I kind of started to realize, and I realized this a lot even in my experience with spiritual abuse, the performance and how we performed a lot of times was more important than that relationship, and kind of developing that relationship with Christ. And so I took that and I said, you know what, this is something that I need to start practicing, with my own children. Looking at their lives and realizing that they're really just trying to carve out and make their own lane. They're going to make these mistakes, they're going to stumble, they're going to learn, They're going to have to cry. They're going to have dad. They're going to have down days. They're going to have good days. They're going to have all these different things. And, my job that I'm starting to recognize and learn is that it, when we came out of our experience, especially dealing with spiritual abuse, it caused me to realize that there's a lot of things that we have in life that are so performance based that cause a lot of extra anxiety, a lot of extra tension and stress that doesn't need to really be there a lot of times. And I felt like I was doing that as a father. A lot of times it was like I want my kids to act a certain way, be a certain way, and they don't need to be loud in public and all these different things. But now I'm starting to realize, what, I just got to have patience with them because they're just learning just like me. The same mistakes that I've probably made over and over and over again, are the same mistakes that they've had to deal with too. So learning to have that patience over the performance was a huge, huge thing for me, especially with my son. My son he's 6 years old. And man, you've seen him in the picture. He looks like me, but I can probably imagine that at that age, I was probably around the same way. There's things that used to bother me, things that I was dealt with at that age. And after going through that experience, it really kind of helps give you a compassion when you're dealing with other people and, even obviously with your children, but it gives you this compassion that, I can be a little bit more patient with people. And for me as a father, that was the approach that I decided to take. So number two, check this out. I did to change my approach when it came to discipline, and I decided to change to more of a love-based approach rather than a fear-based approach. On some of the videos I talk about, when you're in a spiritually abusive environment, one of the foundations, one of the things that you're going to see that really runs through a lot of conversation, really runs through a lot of mannerisms. It really runs through a lot of how the culture is this fear-based kind of culture. It's not a fear where people may not really necessarily say it, verbally. They may not verbally say, "Hey, I see, this type of bullying going on, or I see this going on." They may not say it like that. Um, but one of the things that we got to kind of learn and just kind of think about is that even though it's not verbally said, that doesn't mean that tension and that undertone isn't still there. And a lot of times when we see it in spiritual abuse, that is it's a very common and prevalent thing. So what I've kind of learned and I've kind of just recognized and even observed in my own life and, watching other folks and studying a little bit on this is that sometimes even in our parenting, there can be that undertone of fear, that our children have in us. And I think, to an extent, there should be that respect. There should be that, that balance that we have, but it really shouldn't be driven by, me having to instill a fear within my children. Right. I don't want to get to the point where I'm a father that they can't be willing to come to me and talk and be willing to, be able to share maybe problems they have that they may need help with, or share feelings or things or thoughts because they're afraid of my response. And so for me, that was a huge thing, even really kind of changing that, because I not only not only do we have to talk about just in my instance, not only did I have to deal with, maybe that undertone of fear just because of maybe my personality, but also I'm 6'5", 225 pounds. I mean, and my kids are 3 foot, 4 foot tall. So, if I get angry and I'm standing there and I'm towering over them, I had to start taking a step back and saying, hey, I wonder what that may look like to a child, me being over them yelling and telling them what they need to do. And so I kind of had to just take a step back and say, okay, let me kind of just look through it from their lens. What are they seeing? How is this, how are they probably interpreting this? Maybe even having a conversation later on and sitting down with them and saying, hey, this is the reason that I got upset and I responded a certain way. How did that make you feel? Right? Kind of validating what their feelings are. I know we kind of come from I know my age group a lot of times where, as children, we weren't really allowed to express feelings or the emotions that we had. A lot of things were very suppressed. And the thing that I'm learning, especially now as, an adult and working with my own, mind and my own experiences is that a lot of those things that we suppress earlier on in life because of fear or being in that environment of fear, things will end up coming out sooner or later, maybe down the road, and they may come out in a lot of ways that we probably don't really like. And so really kind of just constantly making an approach and understanding that, okay, I just came from an environment that operated out of fear and kind of used fear to kind of fill out of the behavior. I don't want to create that same environment in my home, especially when it comes to me and my kids. Right. So I use a love based approach. Right. It's still firm. It's still stern. It still gets the point across. It's still, but it's done in a loving way. Hey, look, this is why I'm being like this. I'm explaining this, and then I'm allowing you to ask me a question. Okay, maybe there's something that I may correct you on, and you feel upset about it, and you may be able to tell me, hey, I feel upset about this. Is my child talking to me? Okay, all right, let's sit down, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why you feel that way, and I'll explain my side, you explain your side, and then we'll come to an understanding here, right? And I think kind of obviously, I don't know how this is going to play out, but hope is that long term, just taking that approach with them is going to teach them how to interact with other people, their intimate relationships, their friends and loved ones that they have as they grow older. They're going to learn, okay, there's a different way for me to approach and get done the way I needed to get done without having to instill fear in other people, right? And then the last one, and this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned out of it. I think for me, this lesson and this approach that kind of changed my perspective on it, uh, transformed a lot within the last couple of years. And that's simply the fact that sometimes it's okay with not being okay. Sometimes it's okay with not being okay. Well, I can kind of remember back. I try and remember back. I know there may be a lot of times where maybe I was going through things or dealing with things growing up as a kid, and just thinking to myself that I had to try and kind of keep a lot of those things under wrap. Like I couldn't tell somebody things that I was struggling with, or thoughts that I was in, or battles that I was kind of dealing with. And for me, it's just one of those things where over the last few years, especially coming out of this experience, especially kind of tying all these things together, right? Being coming out of a performance based, coming out of a fear based kind of environment. A lot of times in those environments, you're not allowed to not be okay, right? You're not allowed to not be in a space where everything is not going perfect, right? Everything is not going great, right? A lot of times in those environments, a lot of smiles are put on, and a lot of the ways that we learn how to act and interact, in when we the way that we need to. But a lot of times, a lot of folks aren't doing okay. And these last couple years, especially in exploring this, especially learning it, talking to other people, you know dealing with my own mind, dealing with my own thoughts and emotions, and going, I realized, hey, you know what, it's okay if you're not having a good day, and I'm going to respect that, because I know there's a lot of days when I wake up and I'm not having a good day, right? And so as a father now, I can look at my children and say, hey, you know what, I've been there. I know sometimes it is, it's kind of rough and it's kind of difficult to go through those things. It's okay with not being okay, and that's fine. Because tomorrow could be another day. Things could turn around, things could change. And that's where I try and kind of lead them and guide them in the approach that I'm taking with them. Is that, if I recognize that they're in a certain space, or experiencing a certain thing, or having a certain moment in life that we all do, especially as children, then I have to just recognize it, just give them that space and allow them to not be okay, but then also to let them know that, hey, I'm here for you in case you need me, just in case you need me, in case you need somebody to lean on. I can be here for you, and I can help you. And so, my kids really, they really taught me this. And these are some of the lessons that I started learning coming out of our experience. And I know it doesn't, it may not make a lot of complete sense of, how could some of these things cause you to look at life like this. But I really think that when you kind of boil it down and look at it, it is possible that out of some of these circumstances that you can take the perspective you learned, you can take the experience that you had, and you can use it and transform it into some good. I mean, that's really, even in this whole channel, and even a lot of the things that I talk about on this channel, it's not the things that we talk about, the interviews, the talks. They're not to bash or beat down anybody. What they're meant to do is help folks that are coming out of this experience understand that there's a possibility for you to heal, right? There's a possibility for you to be whole, and the things that you're walking through and you're dealing with are part of that process a lot of times. And that's what it is. It just kind of takes time. So that's what I got, today. These things, I really tried to really implement these things. I mean, obviously, not perfect on 100% level like a lot of us are, and that's okay. But it's helped me to take a different approach in how I raise my children. And I think, one of the things that as a man, especially in our generation, I take that very, very seriously. Take it as a responsibility. When I stand, I know that's one thing he's going to ask me. How did you raise Vanessa? How did you raise Michael? What'd you do? How did you protect? How did you serve? How did you build up? How did you help lead? How did you help encourage? How do you help, teach them how to deal with the world? How did you help break some curses? And how did you help break some generational things so that they can flourish? And so, out of that experience that we had in the church, and even though it was hurtful, I took some good lessons out of it. So I'd love to hear what you got to say. Maybe you're watching this on a replay. Check it out. Do me a favor. Drop me a comment down below. I appreciate the comments that I've been getting thus far. Some really good feedback, helpful, very encouraging. And I'd love to hear what you have to say. What are some things that maybe, if you're a father, if you're a man and you're, watching this, what are some things that you implemented in your life, or we can get on and talk about it? Let me know. But until next time, this is Nick with the Life Recreated channel. Listen, keep learning, keep healing, and keep growing. I'll catch you next time.